Welcome. Today we're going to delve for the first time into Lord of the Rings. Welcome to the HolmFront.
We do not.
So I'm going to put a poll up. We were just having a discussion off screen. Who wants to see Rings of Power? We can do that. Welcome to the HolmFront. Welcome to the no one here. Welcome to the HolmFront. I'm Tyler, your host, and to my right, as always, it's my really artistic friend Mitch. Mitch,
hello.
Thank you.
You're welcome
For enduring all this with me.
It was my pain.
Do you have anything to announce? By the way, I think off screen is done.
No, I have.
You're
no
not
news.
releasing any new videos soon on your own channel, right?
No, I am actually. I'm going to be making one this
There it
week.
There it is. Are you making?
Do I just always have something going on in my life?
I just like to make sure.
Yeah, I'd have an episode or a commentary. I'm comparing Super Metroid with Metroid Dread. So if you're a big Metroid fan, I'm just going to go way deep into it. The script's all written. I've been trying to do it for a while, but I've been sick, and so I've been coughing and hacking and trying to get my voice back to normal caliber. But
It's pretty sexy.
I'm all good now.
There it is. That's going to be the whole episode. So, well, now that that's out of the way, what did we watch the other day? Because we watched something the other day.
Yeah.
I want to forget it.
But you're not going to be allowed because now we're going to immortalize it on this show.
Yeah, this is what's going to immortalize that movie. What did we watch?
We saw War of the Rohirrim. Is that what it was called?
War of the Rohirrim.
Okay. It wasn't really a war. I don't know why it's called that.
Yes, there was some war, kind of.
I don't think one battle constitutes a war.
There was like two. Yeah, there was two.
Yeah, but they were like really far apart. And they were not like...
That's what makes it a war, because of how far apart they were. So it was a long-lasting...
I mean, I guess, but
actually,
most of
there's three, because they had two guys fight in the beginning. That's a battle.
Hey, that was just like a feud. It didn't count. Okay, so this is, to give some context, this is an anime Lord of the Rings movie.
Yep.
I don't know what else to say.
And
it's
I'm not sure if I want to make this a Rotten Disparities review.
What is the Rotten Disparities
That's
on
a
this?
great question.
Okay, why don't you look that up?
I'm going to look that up real quick while you...
I will just say in advance, this one over to my left, he does not like anime. But I do. I'm a big anime fan. So, and we're both Lord of the Rings fans. And sadly, this is the thing we're going to start talking about for our first Lord of the Rings episode. But I guess it was this or Rings of Power. And I'm sure as heck not going to talk about that.
Why not? Rings of Power looks fun.
So, yeah. So, it's like we're comparing, I guess we're grading an anime or Lord of the Rings movie. So your assessment is going to have to be based on those two elements, and you're going to have to figure out where you stand between the two of them. I have to say, I don't know how many people are in the camp of as me where they're, because you have to be an anime fan and a Lord of the Rings fan, but not just that, you have to be a fan of the two elements together. And even though I like both of them, I think I like them separate. It's sort of like salad and cake. I don't really want it mixed in. You know what I'm saying?
What a comparison. So, yeah, I'm going to make it a Rotten Disparities episode.
You got to have to put it up. We got to restart.
I'm not restarting.
They can't see it.
I'm going to read it. So, I don't like
your show.
I don't like the position that this has put me in, by the way. I'm not defending this. I'm not defending this at all. I'm not defending that.
What is the audience score?
I'm going to jump over to the critic side because that's all that matters. So the critics say it's 46%, which...
Critics are right.
That's about right.
They're a little generous, if anything.
And then the audience is 83. Now,
Explanation?
I will say... Shut up. I'll say that with the prerequisite that, yeah, I don't like anime. I almost vehemently despise most anime. It's just
the writing you don't like, though, right? Because you actually like the animation style, I thought.
Some of the animation styles are fine. And they're pretty innovative. And then I like most of the concepts of anime. Like when you
Great story
when you
concepts.
present ideas, they sound interesting. And then I watch the show and I'm like, cool, I'm gonna go watch anything else. So
They do love their exposition.
The exposition and the way they deliver exposition drives me crazy. It's just like if you're using a visual medium, like the fact that you feel like you have to stop everything, and this character's like, if I use this defense and he's gonna use this attack, and it's like, just do it. Just use the defense or use the or whatever. And it's every anime I've tried to watch has been like that. And I'll say the closest that I can get to anime that I appreciate is Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I know most true anime fans will be like, that's not real anime. I get it. That's as close as I'm going to get. That's all I'm trying to say. So this movie, because we both love Lord of the Rings, the original trilogy is like masterpiece.
Yeah, who doesn't love Lord of the Rings?
Weirdos.
Get out of here.
So then when I saw the trailer for this, I was like, why are you doing an anime?
And it's like 200 years or something like that before the events of the movie. So it's just completely disconnected, which I guess is for the best. But it's just such a strange, like, okay, here's a weird question. Why isn't this a show? Not that I support shows, but like...
Yeah, why is this a theater release film?
Yeah, that's what I don't get. Because if you look at, there was the Castlevania anime that they did.
Yeah.
That was actually really good. And it was different. It was unique. And it was able to add more story elements to a franchise that's typically not had that at the forefront. So, like, I feel like this could have been in a similar format as that, but instead they were just like, it's a big theatrical release. You're getting Lord of the Rings in the theater again. But it's an anime. So, like, what Lord of the Rings fan is like... And I'm not saying that to be poo-poo anime. I'm just saying that it's like a very different style.
It's very disparate from what you would imagine would inspire. And it would inspire... Like, this is not... what's the word? A natural cutoff of what we've already experienced within the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I would say
it's almost like going to the theater to watch a Transformers movie directed by Stanley Kubrick. It's like, I mean, I would actually go and watch that movie.
That's fair.
But at the same time, you're sort of like, why is...
Yeah, this is not the natural direction.
That's not really what the audience is.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, Michael Bay is looking for very different things than Stanley Kubrick. But
yes.
I mean, I guess Peter Jackson is involved with this. So I'm going to lay a couple of things out these are strictly speculative. I don't know what the true facts are, so I'll lay that out.
Okay.
I had a discussion with someone beforehand. What he was telling me was that this is a cheap, easy way to release something in theaters that helps the studios, I think it's WB, retain the licenses of Lord of the Rings as they own them. Because Amazon owns a bunch of stuff, but WB owns the rest from when they were doing Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So as long as they're releasing a certain amount of properties, or if they, within a certain amount of time, they're able to keep these licenses. Like I said, this is speculative. I don't know what the true reason is.
That is the reason, though. That makes perfect sense.
But I mean, it makes a lot of sense because this is a lot cheaper than doing what they did for Lord of the Rings specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Lord of the Rings, he kind of had a blank check, and he down to making the mail, the chain link mail that everybody wore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very, very expensive, very long project, and they shot all. That's why they shot all 3 films the way that they did.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's speculative. The other thing is that this is based on a character named Helm Hammerhands, who is a character in the Lord of the Rings lore.
Okay.
And his 2 sons, who are also characters, and his daughter, who is a character who is not named, who does not have a major part in the role. I think she's a political tool within the lore that does not have an extensive story. So this was again, speculative. This seemed like something where they dug up whatever they could to get a female lead within this universe to make a statement within this anime title, which again was already a kind of a weird decision on a creative level, because
on every level.
Yeah, it just was. It's an odd choice. It's an odd choice. I understand it's cheap, and I understand that it does some things for them, or potentially. But anyway, so aside from all that stuff, you get what we got, which I guess let's start here. I mean, 46% for critics, 83% for audiences, which I am not defending. I do not like this movie. What would you rate it on a star system?
1 star. I don't think I would give it 2.
Oh man.
Yeah,
What gives it a 1? Like, why does it not deserve 2?
It's such a pointless thing to watch. It's just so pointless. That's what I kept going back to in the theater. And like, okay, so like what you said about we should tackle the girl boss situation probably up front.
Might as well.
Because they make the whole movie about that, not about her as a person, as a character with like an interesting arc or an interesting perspective on the world. There's none of that. It's just, well, she's important. And then like all the focus boils down to that. And you're watching it going, but she's not interesting. And then she has this like nemesis character who's just like bitter and grouchy. And then you're like, he's not interesting either. The conflict between the two,
worse. I mean,
he is worse. I think
they at least tone her down a little bit because I think they realize that the girl boss thing is getting a little old.
Yeah, because she's not insufferable.
His like ridiculous edgelord thing, the whole movie just the scar. Like it's just please stop. He's so stereotypical for the edgy anime character. The whole movie. Like he doesn't change at all. He comes in all simpy. He's like, "Don't you love me?" And none of us know who this guy is or where he came from.
Right.
And she's like, "I don't love you." And it's like, "Who is this? What are you talking about? Do you guys know each other or something? Like we haven't been a part of any of this."
And then it gives us a flashback of when they were kids fighting.
Later.
Way later.
It's like you have to wait to they actually knew each other. And like, okay, cool. I want to know that beforehand. Because they start, and I understand why. This is like the classic Lord of the Rings thing, right? They do the whole exposition thing in the beginning.
Yeah.
But the thing about Lord of the Rings is that they give you a history. They're kind of trying to catch you up to where the movie's going to start. This one is like...
Otherwise, you'd be sitting there going, what the heck is up with this stupid ring? Why does it matter so much?
And
I don't understand.
Who are all these players?
You're telling me that it's all this power, but I don't really have anything to base that on. So the prologue in Fellowship, it shows you
it's a prologue,
this is the power of this ring. This is what it does. This is who it's influenced. This is the impact it has. This is why it failed to destroy. This is the context lore that everybody in Middle-earth should be, or mostly everybody is aware of, not so much the hobbits.
So there's that. This one does the exposition thing, telling us who this main character is. And it's like, wouldn't we just find that out by watching the movie? And this is getting really old with most of these new properties. It's like she was strong and hard-headed and independent. It's like, I'm watching the movie. Just be that person. And she wasn't that person. That was the other thing.
Yeah, she totally wasn't.
All this stuff that they said that she was. See, then the whole movie proved that she was none of these things.
She was just a nice princess girl. She was just a educated, smart,
kind of level-headed, kind of mild, not super timid or anything, but she was just kind of like...
She wasn't annoying. It's not like we were made to hate the character. It's just that the storyline kept going back to like, see how she's a woman and how strong she is. We were like, yeah, I got that already. Right. And then you'd want the story to kind of do something more, go a little deeper.
Right. Are you going to do anything with that? Or are you just going to like keep reminding me that? It was weird. And that's the thing, is that the girl boss comments are actually not about her. She's not that bad.
Right.
The girl boss comments about this other character who, my gosh, was just...
She was insufferable.
Insufferable the whole movie. So the not only do they start with the contrivance, which already it stands out so heavily because they start out with this page character, whatever he is, this like announcer. He's holding this sheet of parchment and he has a list of people that are supposed to show up at the kingdom, and he's going to announce them. And at the bottom of the page, there's like this piece that's ripped out. And so you can only see a bit of their arms, their coat of arms.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Who's this?" And he says it really loud, and there just happens to be a character walking by that knows all about what that was.
Yeah.
He's like, "That's the Shield Maidens. And the Shield Maidens, once all their men died, are the ones that rose up and blah, 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 blah." And it's like, so this stupid thing is going to come around somehow and payoff somewhere, if you can call it a payoff. But they're saying, yeah, most of them or all of them are dead, and then someone's like, not all of them. And you're like, oh my gosh,
not all of them.
Yeah, I wonder what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, there's this character who's like, I don't know what she's like, a servant, or she's just kind of.
She is a tough shield maiden.
Whatever. So she's someone like helps the princess. So she's kind of like, I don't know, she waits on her hand.
Yeah, like a mentor or something.
Sure.
I don't know.
So anyway, the princess gets kidnapped.
They never explained.
No,
this is a flaw. You can't just have a character hanging around with no context for why they're supposed to be there. Now when they're so close to royalty,
it as like a mentor type thing. She's in the palace, so she's someone to like help the princess with maybe writing or lessons or whatever. They don't explain a lot. They don't really show her at all. She just kind of tags along until at some point she reveals herself as this shield maiden that isn't dead.
Mm-hmm.
So the princess gets captured. I don't know, I guess her like household guard goes out after her. And this lady
he's like
with.
a cousin. He's some royalty as well.
Right.
Yeah.
But this lady comes with, and you're like, who is this person? He's like, I got a plan. Let's go get her. And she's like, no, that's not going to work. I've got a plan. And it's like, all right. And then she bursts through this door with this tiny little shield and her sword. And you're like, oh no.
And they just break her out. And it's just like some regular plan that anyone could have come up with.
Right. He probably had the same exact, if not similar plan. She's just like, no, I want to be the one to go in.
And it's like, remember, it was her plan. And then when they're riding away, she's like, when like it starts to fall apart a little bit, she's like, I never said it was a good plan. It's like, you really pushed for your plan.
Right. You just shot that guy down and said, this is the one we're going with. So they get away, and then, so she is introduced as this character now, which was just an eye roller. I was like, oh, because I don't even remember her name.
I don't either. It wasn't really. She's just this nameless, like, I don't know, just this like
which is the
girl boss character
who
was super annoying.
The princess also has no name, according to Tolkien.
Right.
He doesn't name her.
Right, and they
name her in the movie, or for the movie, which is Hera. Which I get it. That's not a terrible choice. Like, you got to take some creative liberty where it's necessary. The problem is that they've developed this storyline that doesn't exist in order to create this, this moment for these female characters. And it's just, it fell flat. It wasn't compelling. Most of this film was actually fairly boring. Like, I was just waiting for something to happen. And the one interesting thing that happens, it comes like 3/4 of the way in the movie.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, man, this is awesome. More of that. And then they're like, no. We're going back to the other storyline. And they just cut it off. You get like 5 minutes of it. Maybe not even that. It was pretty short.
Yeah, because what happens is her dad, what's his name?
Helm Hammerhand.
Helm Hammerhand. So, like, his sons die in a kind of faulty decision he makes as king in this battle. But it wasn't really his fault. He just wasn't aware that, like, these other people who were supposed to be loyal to him were going to betray him. So, anyways, his sons die, and he's, like, sad and depressed about it, and he's injured, so he's just recovering in Helm's Deep. And then they're, like, on the outskirts, because, you can't storm Helm's Deep. It's really difficult. So the evil guy, Wolf, and his army are trying to figure out a way to get in, and meanwhile, they're getting massacred. And not just massacred, like, their corpses are getting eaten and stuff. Like, it's freaky stuff, and it, like, shows.
It's like a horror movie. It's like, pause, we're going straight horror.
Yeah. And
what is going on?
At the same time, Hammerhand is not in his bed. He just mysteriously...
which is awesome.
Evaporates. Right, and nobody knows where he is. You come to find out that it is him, but it's not quite a ghost. He just snuck through the back, and he's just, like, brute forcing these guys. I mean, he doesn't even use a weapon. He has the option to take a weapon on multiple occasions, and then
he just says, nah.
Boom! He just uses his fist.
To death.
It's hilarious, and he's just like out there, this force of nature. And when he came on and started killing people, we were like, man, this movie got a lot more interesting. I mean, just because like there was something happening on screen. Because before they were just like twiddling their thumbs and copying Two Towers, and just trying to like enforce like the girl boss thing. And like I'm way more tolerant of girl boss stuff. I think it's generally fine. But like this one was just, it's like you're distracting from the story because it's
the
not
whole story.
adding anything.
That was the thing. It wasn't just like bits. It wasn't a character that was annoying. this was what the story revolved around, and so it was constantly distracting.
Right. And it does this disservice because it just creates a situation where now you're not going to add depth to your female characters.
Right.
Because you don't have to, because now they're a girl boss and they just have to be portray that image. And it's like, okay, so I guess if you like that kind of content, that's fine. But here's the thing with like Hammerhand, it's like they set up something interesting there. Even if you're just like, oh, he's a big tough guy beating people up. Yeah, but also like he just lost like his family, so you had like the tragedy element to it.
Right.
So, and it was also like, you know, he was this king, and so he was kind of on some level losing his way because he was fighting them, but he was doing it personally. He was making it personal. So I was like, okay, there's like threads you can pull on this. So I was getting interested because I was like, this is potential for you to do something. And, you know, it's short-lived. It's nice while it lasts. And then they
go back to the boring story.
Right. Disregard that.
I'll go through a brief synopsis of the film.
Okay.
Because I don't think we do this enough to where it's super clear what we're referencing. So basically, within Rohan, there's another faction that comes in and they want to marry the prince to the princess in order to join their houses because they think that they're too reliant on Gondor and they want to kind of separate themselves out as Rohan. That's all fine. The princess says no, she doesn't want to. The father, Helm Hammerhand, says no. And somehow this arises like the other king now wants to fight Helm for this. He's like, how dare you reject me? So they go outside. Helm Hammerhand punches. He just pulls a one-punch man, hits the guy and kills him. And
straight up kills him. One punch.
Boom, done. So Wolf, the son, the prince, who apparently has this long backstory with the princess, Hera, vows vengeance on the whole family. He's like, no, Helm and all of his kin, they're going to die for this. And it's like,
which is weird because we never even got the sense that he even liked his dad.
Right. He just kind of shows up and he's like, well, yeah, I want to marry her. You want me to marry her?
Yeah.
This sounds good. And so, and his dad, Wolf's dad, is the one that starts the fight.
Yeah.
And so Helm, by accident, kills this guy, but Wolf now wants vengeance. And so, like I said, there's not a lot there to like allow you to relate with these characters at all, because they don't take any time to like build up a relationship with Wolf and his father, to build the tension between Helm and this other king. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to the viewer because you're like, why are these guys? Because they seem to have some kind of disagreement that's off screen. And
about what? Who knows?
Right. They just know that like one of these guys seems kind of evil because he's wearing black and he's all like, he's giggling and laughing. Ha, 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 I'm evil. And then you have Helm, who seems a little too stern and hard-headed, and so he goes out and accidentally kills him, and it just seems like it's clearly a mistake, but Wolf is like, I don't care, you're going to die, and I'm going to kill your family too.
Mm-hmm.
So then he disappears for years, and everyone's like, where's Wolf? And then they start this subplot. So I guess Hera's not allowed to ride out alone anymore, even though she used to ride out all the time, because they're finding a bunch of dead animals that are like partially eaten or decayed or something.
Mm-hmm.
They're just finding these all over the countryside, and so she's constantly going out with people, and then they discover this Oliphant, which I assumed there was some kind of blight or disease or something, because it's all kind of tore up and mangled. It's almost acting like a zombie type of thing.
Yeah.
And it starts chasing him down. She runs into the woods. She goes up to this body of water, which apparently is where a Watcher is sitting, which if you don't know what a Watcher is, it's the giant squid in Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, that grabs Frodo. It's like the giant octopus-looking thing.
Just outside of Moria.
And it's just chilling in this random little swamp. It's like...
hanging out.
And not only is it just hanging out there, it's apparently large enough to swallow an Oliphant.
Yeah, it's straight up...
And that happens.
It tentacles him out and then
just
eats it.
Swallows him. Just eats him up and goes right back to bed.
It was like...
is this body of water large enough to hold something that can eat an Oliphant?
And here's the thing.
Because it does not look like it.
No. And like, if you watch the Lord of the Rings movies, you know, you can see the vast disparity in size between these two creatures.
Right.
And I mean, you can walk up to the Watcher and pretty much like, you know, like Aragorn, he like chops off one of its like tentacle things. But with like the Oliphants, you can't. There's no way you could get a sword through one of its limbs. Like that thing's huge.
Yeah.
So and
well,
if
you see them try, they're
right,
like riding under it and stuff and hitting it. Wonder Yeah,
right.
so like the disparity, like it would probably a fight, like it could probably wrap it up and drown it or something.
Right.
But that mouth, like they show the mouth in the movie.
Right, it's barely big enough to swallow Frodo.
And it's like this one is just kind of like, and like open. It's like, what? No way.
Well,
so anyway, go ahead.
Well, and the other thing about that too is if you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, it's an anime now, it's animation. They don't have to follow the scale of Lord of the Rings. I would agree with you, except in this movie, they put painstaking effort to make everything look exactly like the Jackson films. It's like, this is Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
This is Edoras. Like, it's almost like they took a screenshot and then just did
3D modeled it or whatever.
3D modeled it afterwards.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're taking that much detail to it,
right.
What am I to assume about the difference in scale of these two things? That's clearly not at all to scale in those other movies. So it's like sometimes we're following this rule and other times we are not.
Yeah, and that's, you're going to follow that kind of continuity as an audience member, especially as fans of Lord of the Rings. Like, we're not that far into the lore of Lord of the Rings, and I'm not going to claim that I am, and I'm not going to claim that those are impossible things in the world. It just seemed very odd that, because they intentionally show you, like, you can see the whole swamp, and it's really small.
Right.
And it's like, just because it's still, like, I thought it was going to be like a mermaid or some kind of other creature that they would show.
There's something new.
Something new, something within the Tolkien world. Instead,
I thought it'd be like a wraith or something.
Sure. Or a barrel white, whatever.
Yeah.
Instead, they pull out a watcher, which already was setting me on edge because it was constantly using things that have been used before, and that is a sign that you're not creative enough or not well versed enough to put in something more interesting to this movie. It has to constantly reference back to other films, and that happens on a bigger scale. In the main example being that when they're attacked at Edoras, they run to Helm's Deep, and it's like,
it's the same plot point.
It's the same plot line.
Yeah.
And so, like, this might be the actual historical event within the Tolkien universe. The problem with it is, like, you are now putting yourself in a vulnerable situation where you're comparing yourself to something extremely well-beloved.
Yeah.
Like, the Lord of the Rings original trilogy is something that most people are like, this is Lord of the Rings on screen. I understand some people have some issues with it, but, like, that is, magnum opus.
Yeah.
For Peter Jackson, and, like, most people that are fans of Lord of the Rings will accept it.
Yeah.
And so when you've done that, you're like, well, you're going to constantly reference back to these things that I know pretty well from a 24-year-old movie, 23-year-old movie.
Yeah.
That's a bad place to put yourself in. So I had problems with all that because then they did it further and further and further and further. There was like 4 or 5 different actual events that just were almost plot for plot or point for point.
Yeah.
Just straight out of the films. I was like, why would you do this? We already have the movies. Why wouldn't you do something that's so far removed that this is a brand new property altogether?
Yeah.
It's just very strange.
Well, and you compound this problem when you're literally pulling lines of dialogue from the Jackson films, like exactly, and just reattributing them to similar enough circumstances.
Yeah.
They do it constantly throughout this, and this is why it's a 1-star for me. It's like you're literally just like taking the script. It's almost like an AI written piece because it's
Control
just
C, Control V.
Yeah,
here.
exactly. Control C, Control V. Let me grab that line. Oh, that's a line that they really like. Like, I don't know that I've seen this particular use of the nostalgia baiting because we saw it in like Han Solo where they're like playing the Imperial March. That was a really egregious one because that was so strange. It was like, so now John Williams exists in Star Wars was essentially what they were saying with that. But there's all these different strategies you could use. This one took the stance of, let's just use the same script. Let's just copy lines and just copy and paste them over into this movie. And it was like, so what's unique and original about this? So when we're talking about the characters now, they have no depth and they're just like these stereotypical things. It's because like they're just carbon copies of other far superior characters that had original writing to go with them. Apparently, this is something you have to ask for now in your movie. So it's just like you bring the quality down so low when you do that, I feel. So it was just like, I can't even, it's like there's nothing to engage here. This just feels like an amalgamation of like it's like someone saw Lord of the Rings and watched an anime and then went to bed and had a dream in which the two were conflated together. That's what it felt like.
It felt like it was written by a kid. Like a teenager or something.
Yeah.
Who's an anime fan and loved Lord of the Rings, and he's like, I'd love to do this, and he just kind of put all this familiar plot points in. So, well, did you have something else on that?
Well, I was gonna say, they had an opportunity to tell something more original too, because we go back to the Shield Maiden, and when she would describe,
yeah, you made that point after the movie. I was like, that's a great point.
Yeah, she described like, well, the Shield Maidens, we did this in this storyline, and I was like, that sounds cool. Like, why can't we just watch that? Like, just tell the story about these Shield Maidens. What are the Shield Maidens of Rohan? You can watch the scenario where the men get killed, and then it's the women kind of gathered together, and like seeing them kind of adjust to this like situation. That sounds like it would be really psychologically interesting. There'd be a lot of tension because they're in this desperate situation, and they're in a role now that they don't want to be in, and they're kind of forced to survive. I'm like, that sounds like great storytelling material.
Right.
I'm so into that. And then you also get to learn something about Lord of the Rings lore, which is the Shield Maidens of Rohan, which they've mentioned, but we've not really seen. I'm like, this is a great opportunity. Like, what's wrong with you guys? Like, why can't we just do this? This seems like the thing to do.
It's a far better idea. Because then you could just do this one on actually Helm Hammerhands, which seemed like a much more interesting character in this film.
Yeah, and then you create the two. And like, again, if you did it as a TV show, maybe you could do both.
Yeah, and so I don't know if the Shield Maidens are official Tolkien lore, but I don't think it matters that much. What's interesting about, like, for instance, I reference Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War as two.
Oh, yeah.
So these are two video games that are based on the Tolkien universe.
Yes.
But are very loosely connected lore-wise, apparently. So there's a lot of creative
not
liberty.
Apparently, they're not really connected at all.
Again, I don't know enough to like understand what they did and didn't do. Like, for instance, Shelob is a female character in it that can switch between spider and human form in Shadow of War.
That's not necessarily incorrect.
Well, this is creative license based on Ungoliant, who can do that and was officially doing that in the books in the Silmarillion.
That part's fine. I just mean the character you play in that. And like his interactions with Gollum and stuff, all that is just like what.
There's a lot of weak points to it. I'm talking about on the wider scale though, like a lot of the Nazgul and who they choose. Like Helm Hammerhands, for instance, is one of the Nazgul. Now I don't know if any of the Nazgul's identities are confirmed, but for instance, in the end of that Shadow of War game, spoilers for Shadow of War, Shadow of War game, the main character Tal, he becomes, or Talion, whatever it is, he becomes a Ringwraith. So he actually joins their ranks. And like I said, I don't know if any of these are confirmed. I don't think it even matters. The point is that they had licenses within the rules given by Tolkien, which then they just kind of were like, well, let's just go ham. Like, we enjoy it as much as everyone else does. We'll just kind of make it our own thing, even though they reference a lot. And a lot of it's kind of derivative. But like, there was enough in there that was interesting based on what you understood of or what the common person understands of Tolkien lore already. Yeah. So I was like, all right, I can accept this.
Well, I mean, it also helped that it was an original game because the Shadow of Mordor, that first one, because they made two, but that first one, it delivered on a promise that a lot of games were touting up at the time and just failing to do, where they kept saying, you're going to have factions and then they're going to like
you're talking
be
about
independent.
The Nemesis system?
Yeah, the Nemesis system.
Yeah.
And the thing that made that game so revolutionary is that it actually worked. And you actually did have factions of orcs, and they would have like leaders and tiers and like generals and things, and you could infiltrate their hierarchy, and you could like you could assassinate like someone in command, and then you get someone to go and replace him, and it all follows orc psychology, which was hilarious and interesting. But I guess what I'm saying is, there were a lot of people, like I remember someone specifically back in college, I was talking with him about it, and he was like, oh, that game like doesn't understand Tolkien lore at all, but it's a great game. And then he would talk extensively about...
Exactly my point.
Right, so like there was something that it did provide that was interesting and engaging. And the thing with this is it just doesn't do that. Hammerhand or Helm Hammerhand or whatever, he's the only thing that's like, I guess, from the lore that seems like, okay, you could pick at that or the Shield Maiden thing. But it's like you don't really commit to either one, and then you just decide to fill in the gaps with like, the narrative from Brave all over again.
From what I understand, yeah, the tension between the two and the marriage of his daughter, that's all a part of it. Like I said, I'm not well versed in this, so don't judge me on that. But so that storyline creates the war in which Helm Hammerhands goes crazy and gets his name. Like all that, I think, is part of it. But again, the princess is just the princess. She's just the daughter that he marries off, or is married off, whatever the case may be. The thing about it is they expounded on that storyline and take creative licenses that didn't justify the need to do that. Like what they came up with was very underwhelming and bordering boring. Yeah, there was very little there that was like, man, this was worth it. Because I would have preferred to either see the Hammerhand story, because that was a lot more interesting, or the Shield Maiden story, because that also was interesting. And they barely mentioned it. It was like, well, yeah, that sounds like a way better plot that they could have made a whole movie out of.
It's like, here's what the Shield Maidens produce: this obnoxious troll person who just has to interfere with everything going on. Because, I mean, she has no story. She has no, like...
She just kind of shows up to fill these roles that they need filled.
Yeah.
And doesn't have any justification. Like, she's shouting orders and, like, dictating this one battle. And you're like, why is she in charge? What is she doing here? And then, she's the one that saves Hera when it's like... They intentionally make it where the male character starts to make the plan, and then she takes it away, and then she devises this plan.
Yeah.
And then she's one of the characters is like, I thought you had a plan. She's like, I didn't say it was a good plan. I was like, well, then why didn't you just let the other guy do it? What plan was his plan?
Yeah.
Like, was this an amalgamation of the two? It just seemed like she was just very pretentious. She's just kind of shoving her way into places where you're just kind of like, what are you doing here? And it was just, she's very irritating, for one.
Well, she had this like snarky attitude about it where she was like...
Snarky, pretentious attitude where she just kind of, I don't know, she just inserted herself in these situations where you're like, why are you here?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. She's not even like a main character. The movie doesn't do anything to prop
Yeah, because
her
who
up
is
at
she? Who is she in Tolkien lore? Who is she in like the context of the narrative? It's like she's just a mentor character. She's like an Obi-Wan. It's like, imagine if you watched New Hope and Obi-Wan did like everything. Like, not only does he die from Vader and save Luke so they can escape, but then he comes back as a Force ghost to stop Vader again so that Luke can destroy the Death Star. It'd be like, why are you still here?
Right.
Get out. Like,
you're
this
just
is
supposed
clearly...
to help this other character grow.
Right.
Where this character is like, no, I'm still part of the story. It's like,
yeah,
you're missing your point, but okay.
Yeah. And then she like shows up and she like throws her shield and she's like Hera takes the shield. And she's like, now I'm like a shield maiden again. And I was like, wait a minute, you didn't even establish like why we should care about the shield maidens, or like what about them, like,
or why you care about this character.
Like, you told me what it was, but you're a movie. I want to see it. I want to experience it. I want to know who were the major players in it. If you were one of those major players, then I want to know your arc of transformation. Yeah. And we don't get
or what you
any
contribute
of that
to someone else's transformation. Because what I assumed was going to happen was that at some point they were going to probably sit down and talk, Hera and the shield maiden character.
Yeah.
And the shield maiden would be like, this is what happened to me. This is how I ended up here. They took my sons, or they took my husband, or something, and we had to rise up. And so I want to be the one that helps you do the same in this situation. Because
especially after her family dies, because that would make sense. Because now she's in charge. That would have been a really good sentimental moment to have her.
But there's
pass
no
the torch.
connecting movement. Like I said, there's no justification for this character being who this character is in the movie. And so you're constantly just kind of like, stop.
She just happened to be on the side of the Rohan. Like, that's the only reason why you follow her. Otherwise, you would have hated her guts.
Yeah, I mean, we'll do. Okay, so moving along from her, I think
we got to get off that topic.
We'll just go into... we'll just go into Wolf and then how he resolves his arc, because that's kind of where we're going anyway.
Is there anything to say about him? I mean, he's so flat. He's another horrible character.
He's extremely ridiculous.
He's just like, like, this woman rejects me, and that's enough for me to like build an army and then go to war
all of them
for years on end. Right. I'm like, dude. And then he like lies to his troops about there being wealth in Helm's Deep, which is
to motivate them to go in. He's like, there's so much gold in there. This is what's gonna, you guys go in there and kill them all so that you can feed your families. It's like,
which is an interesting move, right? Except like, it's just so he can get revenge on one person.
Are left asking what happened, because you really like you said earlier,
who hurt you? Like,
you don't know how much he loves his dad. You just know that it is his dad's. And I understand that like there's vengeance in there, but instead of just killing Hammerhands, but you'd think you'd be like, challenge him to a duel or something. He's like, no, I'm gonna butcher your sons I'm going to butcher your dog. And then I'm going to kill all of your people. I'm going to burn you to the ground.
Yeah.
I'm going to make you watch, and then I'm going to kill you last. It's like,
jeez.
What is wrong with you? Oh, my gosh.
Sicko.
No wonder she's not in love with you. My gosh. So there was no justification for him being that angry.
Yeah.
So he's just this really angsty, overly anime character.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, he comes in, he's like, if you marry me, I'll stop. It's like,
he blackmails her.
What?
You're like, what?
Yeah, that'll make her fall in love with you, man.
Yeah.
But good job. I've tried that like 3
that
times,
always wins over a woman's heart.
Rejected. I don't know why. So yeah, all that happens, and then he does it. He kills the one son with an arrow through his neck, and then he cuts the other one's throat.
Yeah.
And then he's still expecting her somehow to marry him, and it's like, you really think that this is gonna work out for you? But the problem with that is, somewhere in there, and this is another thing, like there's a couple of plot points in there that are just, they're so confusing because you're like, why is this here? So when they get to Helm's Deep, this random character who's just kind of wandering around Helm's Deep, she's just this ancient crone who's just wandering around. Like, you don't learn anything about her at all. She's just there.
Yeah.
And she's like, so for some reason, Hera finds this box. She opens it up, and there's a wedding dress inside. Why? Don't know. It's in there.
And she's like, don't touch the wedding dress.
Like,
and we're like, whoa.
There was a bride once that showed up, and she never wore it. And it's like, who are you? What's this dress? What does this have to do with anything? It's just so that Hera can put on the dress and fight at the end.
Yeah.
Which is so cringy, because it's like, she comes out, and like,
did you catch the symbolism?
So she comes out, and like, you can tell they're trying to draw a parallel to Eowyn, but Eowyn actually had a line that meant something to the story.
She did.
And like, it fit. It wasn't just this thing that they throw in for no reason.
Yeah.
This Hera comes out, and this guy's like, you wear a wedding dress. I've already rejected you. Like, I don't want you. You haven't said no to me. I don't want you. But so she comes out, and like, he takes it in an affront. And he's like, who are you marrying today? And she's like, my groom is death, or some stupid line like that.
That was so weird. I was like, isn't it Rohan?
Yeah.
You should say
everyone thought it was going to be Rohan. It was like, because you're coming out to defend Rohan.
Right.
And she's like,
and
no.
You're adopting the role of being the new leader of Rohan.
Right.
The queen, because everyone else has died. You're the next in line.
Right.
So
it made no sense, because death wasn't like a
death?
theme for any of this. It was like, what do you mean death? So what I think
so
happened
weird.
is that some idiot watched Two Towers, and when Theoden goes up and was like, for death and glory, it was like, no, that's what they like. That's what Rohan likes, is death and glory. And I was like, no, that's not what he was saying.
It's like aliens watched Lord of the Rings and then tried to make a Lord of the Rings movie.
It's like, that's not what he was saying. He was saying, there's no hope. We're not getting out of this situation. We're going to die so these people can make it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go out with a bang.
Yeah.
That's what he was saying.
Well, and to go back to what misunderstanding what characters mean, the same thing with Eowyn. It's like, you can't just, it's not that Eowyn killed the Witch King. It's not that simple. The whole point of her storyline, which, by the way, she's my favorite character in Lord of the Rings.
She's a great character.
I love Eowyn because she has such a powerful spirit. She's like, doesn't matter who you are. Like, part of like fighting for something is a matter of like having that personal drive and that sense of responsibility.
And it's not just about her being a woman either, because she props Mary up.
Exactly.
And she's like, why are you guys making fun of him? He has just as much a right to fight as anybody else does.
Right.
We're all going to die. So either we all pick up our arms and do something about it,
right,
or we're going to lose.
Right.
And she's like, I'm going to pick something up and do something about it. And it was like, that's an inspiring message.
Right.
And Eowyn embodies that, and she happens to get thrown in the situation, which she doesn't throw herself in. She's not like walking out there like, I'm the only one that can do something. She's like,
I've got a plan to kill the Witch King.
I got to do something about this. And she's terrified during that moment. And she almost loses.
Right.
That's the thing, is that she doesn't go out and like whip this guy's butt. she's way outmatched.
Well, he's a wraith.
Right.
And he's a king.
No one can fight that, yeah.
Yeah, nobody's going to be able to. I mean, that guy was even taking on Gandalf. Like, he's that strong. But the whole thing is Eowyn saw it and was like, I am going to put myself between him
I'm the
and
only
my
one
king.
Here.
I'm the only one who can.
I'm gonna do something.
So now I'm going to be courageous for a moment here, and I'm going to do it, even if it means sacrifice my life. It's like, that's bold. That takes some serious will.
Because that's where she finally is able to show her mettle. She's not just talking up a big game.
Right.
She actually gets in a position where she's like, I can run or I can probably die.
Right.
And she chooses to go up and make a stand. And it's like,
and then she wins.
She's not all talk. She's actually doing something when it matters.
Right.
And then obviously Mary helps with that situation. But
the whole thing is because she put herself in that position, it provided an opportunity, and then the narrative changed. Theoden was definitely, I mean, he was going to die regardless, but he was definitely going down.
Right.
Without her doing that.
He either dies brutally by the Witch King or he dies naturally, even though it's from his wounds.
Right. And so she preserved his dignity.
Right.
And yeah, and it's like, just because sometimes it's not about you. It's like she went there, and like you said, Mary comes in and helps her, but it's like she provided time for Mary to notice and then for him to contribute. And then it becomes like a larger message about like if we all stand up and are courageous, what can we accomplish?
Yeah.
You know, so there's like a really powerful message that goes with Eowyn that the writers of this just totally missed.
I don't know why. It's like I'm assuming
that complicated. It's just a really good, like wholesome.
It's a great message. She's a great arc, and Anyway, so she has that line, you know, and it was kind of like the whole "I belong to no man" type of thing.
Yeah, she says that like 8 times in the movie. I was like, I got it. I remember.
I remember. Yeah. I remember the line, I'm no man. It's kind of the same. It's like, no, it's not. The point of that was no living man could kill me. She's not a man.
Right.
And so it's this funny little loophole that she can just end the Witch King on.
Right.
Which, it was like, all right, cool. That was a good line. It was a good line for her character. It was like the end of her arc.
Yeah, because he assumed, he's just like, well, I just need to mention men, right?
Right. Which is funny because it's
like spell.
He's got this spell protecting him, and he totally didn't even think about the entire other section of our race. Whatever. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So it's almost like his own folly bites him in the butt, which I think is kind of
which
great.
is great,
or his own arrogance, I should say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. His hubris is what kills him.
But then when you take there's this situation where they arrive at Helm's Deep, and in the ROHIRRIM movie, and her brother, the one who'd survived, was like trailing behind, but he's got this really pitiful horse that gets tired, so he has to slow down. He's like, I'll catch up. Which is like the dumbest thing ever. I was like, this is a horse of Rohan. You'd have put that thing down.
And he's the
I'm
prince.
Sorry.
You'd think that he'd have a better horse being the prince.
Yeah.
And it's like, she's my trusty old gal. Here's the thing. Whatever. All right. I guess there are some moments like that within the Tolkien lore. The thing about it is, it would have been much, I don't know, less stupid if the horse gets like shot by an arrow or something, and because he like gets off and she's like puffing it.
Yeah, just hyperventilating.
Like, this poor horse is like done.
And I'm not saying that horses don't get tired, but no other horse had a problem with the amount of exertion they were doing. This is the only one.
He's the prince. You'd think that, like, of all people that they'd want to protect, let's protect that guy.
Right.
Anyway,
so they're not going to trade places or have him hop on it. It's so contrived, so stupid. Anyway, so that happens. He gets captured by Wolf, and then she arrives to Helm's Deep because she's talking to him. She's like, okay, well, you'll catch up. And then she gets to Helm's Deep, and she's like, where is he? Where is he?
Yeah, he was right behind us. Like, no, he wasn't.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. He was way back
there. The whole way he wasn't. Like, what are you talking about?
But she has to say that because that's exactly what Eowyn says when they arrive at Helm's Deep. Where's Aragorn?
Where's Lord Aragorn?
Where's Lord Aragorn?
And that's what it felt like. It was like another... And, okay, we got to get in... We don't want to make this too much longer. But, there's just 2 scenes. I'm not sure which is more egregious. I can't even decide. So there's 2 scenes that are just great. Like what you said, Control C.
Yeah.
And I was in the theater and I was like, don't do it. And they did both of them.
Yeah.
The first one is when reinforcements arrive. And where do they arrive? On the hill.
Yep. And then they go riding down.
Oh my gosh.
Save everybody.
They show up, and I was like, "Don't ride down the hill, please."
Yep.
And they ride down the hill. I was like, "There's a reason why this worked in Two Towers, and you don't have the same
Look
reason
to my coming
here."
on the 4th day. Look to the east.
Yeah, and it was because they banished Aomer. Anyway, so there's that. The second one is at the very end. Somehow, for some reason that no one can explain, Hera gets an invitation.
Oh, yeah. By Gandalf.
And
to go on an adventure.
I was like, you would not be this stupid.
Oh.
She's like, I got an invitation from someone. And the shield maiden, not Sam, is like, I'm going with you. And she's like, where are we going? And I was like,
but you have no connection.
Right.
You haven't shared a single moment in this whole movie.
Yeah, she just kind of tells her what to do at certain points. But the thing is, like, I was like, don't do it. Don't be Gandalf. Don't say his name. Don't show his mark. Don't.
They
did it. They did all of them.
All of them.
She has this letter with his mark on it, and she's like, I'm going to see Gandalf. And I was like, stop it. Like, it's so unnecessary.
Yeah.
It's just to be like, I know what I'm watching. I know it's a Lord of the Rings thing. Like, why are you doing this? It's insulting at certain points because you're like, why are you reminding me that this is Lord of the Rings in Middle Earth? Like, yeah. I know it is.
Right.
It's why I'm here. I know what this is. And so, yeah, anyway, and they have Saruman. It's not as egregious with Saruman because he goes to Rohan in order to introduce himself and take over Isengard, which is like, all right.
I thought that was fine.
It seems to fit a lot better.
It was fine. It was whatever.
The fact that I'm going on an adventure happens at the end was like, dude, you're not Bilbo. He didn't come up and invite you on an adventure. Like, stop it. Stop that.
Well, it just starts to create this loophole, too, because I'm like, so where is this character? Seems like she's some pretty important person.
Oh, there's a third one.
Which one was
There's a third one.
I mean, there's like 100 of them, so which one do you want next?
And okay, so these are the major ones. These are the ones that like stood out so hardcore. And this is one that actually they've done multiple times because they did it in The Hobbit too. And this might be partly a Tolkien problem for those two at least. For this one is just a Jackson problem. I'm gonna associate with him because he's associated with this project. Stop with the Eagles. Forever stop. Stop it. They cannot solve every problem for every Lord of the Rings project.
Yeah.
It's the worst. It's like she's for some reason has this relationship with the Eagles in the beginning, which makes no sense.
I didn't understand that at all. Why? What makes you special that you connect with the Eagles?
The worst thing is that she climbs this mountain above Helm's Deep and is like talks to this other random evil that apparently can understand the whatever, maybe that's lore accurate, but she can understand the tongues of men or something. But at the end, this eagle just shows up and solves all the problems. It's like, stop doing that.
Yeah.
It worked for the first movie or for Return of the King.
Yeah.
And then they were like, oh, let's do it for The Hobbit too. Oh, I guess we'll do it for this one.
Well,
and it's like, stop it. Stop.
Don't they get rescued by the eagles in The Hobbit in the book, though?
No, that's what I'm saying. I think that's a Tolkien problem.
Okay.
But you did not need to do it for this movie.
Yeah.
And then I found out afterwards, because we watched the credits, is that eagle's name is Eowyn. I was like, okay, we all need to stop. Stop doing this. Stop referencing the other movies. Just be your own property. And the thing I've been saying for years, especially since Amazon came out with Rings of Power, and I know that's not associated, but still.
Yeah.
The thing that I've been saying is like, there's plenty of actual works by Tolkien that are really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
That they
ton
could
of it.
do. One of which is Children of Hurin, which I personally love that book. That one alone is probably worth a show. I would say like a miniseries at least. That could be a couple of shows or episodes or even a couple of films. Because that one's packed full and it's pretty dark stuff. Like it's a little bit further away from the Lord of the Rings content.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like this is its own story. It's compelling. It's not so derivative of the other stories because it is something separated. Like why wouldn't you just do that? Silmarillion. Why wouldn't you just do that?
Yeah.
I don't understand why you have to keep going outside and doing this like, oh, it's our own thing within the Middle Earth universe. It's like, stop doing that. You clearly are incapable of doing it. Tolkien has plenty of material on his own. Why wouldn't you just pull from any number of his works? Like Chris, his son, went and did all kinds of work for you guys. Just pick one.
Yeah.
Stop doing this. It's odd.
Well, this is where I think it just becomes very illuminating that it's not so much art and you're just doing this to to earn a quick buck to keep the
make
brand.
Some message. That
send some kind of propaganda message that you want to portray. It's like it starts to boil down into those things, and like you don't want to do that and attack the creators, but it's like you're leaving me with no choice because you clearly have options of things you could do. If you really cared about the Tolkien lore, you would tell a story with the Tolkien lore,
and you would tell a good story. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, even, but see, like, even when that, like, for example, you got Hammerhand here. You don't actually want to tell the Hammerhand story, though.
Right.
So it doesn't even matter if it's good or bad because you deviated from that to talk about a character who's, like, not really pertaining to Lord of the Rings. And that would be, even that would be okay, but it's to the excessive degree to which they're like, it's about you, Hera. You're the most important thing in the world. I mean, they almost said that verbatim in the movie. I was like, dude, this character's not that important. And we all know that because we know Lord of the Rings. You know who is important? Freaking Frodo. Because he destroyed the ring. So he matters. Gollum matters. Aragorn matters. Like, these are... Eowyn matters. Like, these are characters who matter in Lord of the Rings. So, like, if Hammerhand matters, then, okay, focus on that. But they're just like, oh, no, we're going over here. So it's just...
You know that most Lord of the Rings fans want to see the story of Helm Hammerhands. So it's almost like you're gypping them on purpose.
Yeah.
In order to deviate into this other character that you want to put on a pedestal that doesn't deserve one.
Yeah.
The other thing with that is there are creative licenses that are taken by Jackson in the original Lord of the Rings fans that didn't deviate from the main narrative.
Yeah.
Namely, Arwen. Arwen does not have a large part in the books at all.
Yeah, she's
barely
really minor.
mentioned. She's mentioned like in the beginning, and then she's mentioned at the end when she marries Aragorn.
Yeah.
In the films, they take a bunch of creative licenses in order to connect that plot line to get to the end, and they do it in a way that makes sense to the narrative. It doesn't deviate so much that it's like we're gonna put all these other characters on the back burner in order to illuminate her. This one does exactly that. It's like everyone knows the name of Helm Hammerhands. You're gonna be like, yeah, but he's an unimportant character in his own story. It's
like, which is weird.
Why would you do that?
And the Arwen thing is interesting too because like what Jackson did, or you know the writers of the script for Lord of the Rings, they looked at that and they were like, hey, there's a romance here. Like Aragorn has a love interest. Right. It makes more sense for us to give her a more prominent role because we're interested in Aragorn. So that makes sense that we would be interested to know like what he personally cares about outside of the conflicts that are going on around him. But the other thing it does is that it helps like streamline what's going on in the story because there's like it's like someone else actually rescues like Frodo or something like that in Fellowship.
Elrond and Gandalf.
It's Elrond and Gandalf. But like they have enough scenes of the like stuff that they're doing already.
Oh, you're talking about who rides out. I forget who rides out and gets like Glorfindel or something.
Yeah, it's like Glorfindel, and it's like Glorfindel is not that. It's like we don't really need him for the larger context of the story.
Right.
It's like a Tom Bombadil. It's like don't shoehorn this person in for one random scene. Let Arwen do it because she already matters for the main characters we're talking about.
Well, and Elrond and Gandalf are the ones that do the horse river.
Yeah.
So they're the ones that cast the spell because they talk about it when they get to Rivendell.
Yeah.
But it doesn't affect anything to take that away from them and hand it to Arwen because Arwen is an elf lady,
as well,
and she's Elrond's daughter, so she would be capable of this kind of thing.
And it's like, how are you going to make it work? It's like, so now you have to do this weird thing where you got to explain people from like adjacent locations are like watching the scene somehow, and then casting a spell. It's like this is getting ridiculous. This is kind of the thing in Dune where it's like, well, in the text it said that like this is what they were thinking, so we have to put that onto the screen. It's like
pulling Dune into this too.
I know. I guess I'm all over the map with this one, but I don't know. Yeah, we gotta. Okay, so here. I feel like this is the last question I want to ask you, and that's what should this movie have been? Like, and I mean it like because it's an anime Lord of the Rings thing that's not. So like, should it have just been an anime and just like screw Lord of the Rings and just try to be the best anime it could have been, or should it have been like less anime-ness? And just been more Lord of the Rings? Should it have been a TV show? Like, what was the proper way? Like, if you were to just pick an option, because we've thrown around a lot, which one would you pick as, like, just do this?
Am I constrained by anything?
No, you
so
pick.
I have no rules. I'm just going to...
You're Jeff Bezos, so you just pick.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Make me Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings. No, like I said, if I were to make something, I would make Children of Hurin, and I would probably make it...
Oh, so you would just disregard this entire movie?
Well, why would I do that? It's just like I said. This is too close. This has too many.
I guess you're right. Yeah.
Plot points that are too close to something that it already exists. I would choose something that is not related. It happens in Middle Earth, I guess, and it has some things to do with like Morgoth and whatnot.
Yeah.
But like, for instance, Children of Hurin. Hurin is the father of the main character in the book. Turin is the main character.
Okay.
Hurin gets captured by Morgoth and set on a chair on a throne where he can see everything happening in Middle Earth. So he's making him watch while he goes to war with his people.
Ooh.
That's Morgoth.
That's
it's
crazy.
like it's really dark. So he sat there and he has to watch while like he goes after his wife and his kids and stuff. And then Turin gets separated from his sister and he starts a war with Morgoth. So he puts on this helm and he becomes this like bad A warrior. And then he eventually meets his sister later in life and marries his sister and has children with her. And then they find out from a dragon that they're siblings, and she goes and kills herself. This is what I'm talking about. Like, this story's pretty dark, but this is the story.
That's wild.
It is, yeah, I was like, is this really part of Lord of the Rings? So that's what I'm talking about, though, is like that would be, I don't know, 6 or 7 episode long show that I would make.
Okay.
And I would make it in the style of Lord of the Rings. I mean, obviously it's darker, and I would try and could tone down a couple of the plot points in it. But like, that's what I would do if I were building something off the Middle Earth that Jackson created, and I would make it as close to the original films, not The Hobbit, but the original Lord of the Rings films as I could. I wouldn't do this anime mess. I wouldn't like. I'd be like, hey, you guys, if you want Lord of the Rings, you're gonna have to do it the way that you establish. You set the standard. I didn't set the standard. You set the standard. So if you want that. If you want Lord of the Rings, like, you have to meet that standard now. Why would you choose anime?
Yeah.
And why would you choose a character and change his story? That's something I don't like at all.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to that Johnson thing. Is like,
it's mine now.
It's not yours to change. You don't get to do this. You have existing material. You have source material. You got to follow it.
Yeah.
That was what you guys did for Lord of the Rings, the first 3 films. Again, that's a standard you set.
Yeah.
So follow it.
Yeah, it's strange to me that Jackson was like, I guess, approving of this project. I also heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that there was like more than 60 different animation studios worked on this.
Yeah.
It's like, holy crap. How is there going to be any consistency? And believe me, it shows, because there were definitely parts where I was like, well, the animation's weird in this sequence. Like, someone's just like moving all around and everybody else is stagnant. I'm like, what is he doing? He's just like, oh, I got all this stuff to say. I'm like, stop moving. Way too much movement. And then there are other sequences where I'm like, oh, this looks nice. Like, so it was just all over the map. It was just like a mess. What a disaster of a movie.
Yeah. Yep. Not 2 thumbs down.
We'll see you guys next time.